those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to this bonus episode of the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment's Savage Worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike. Today, bonus episode. Gary's at work. Manuel is wearing a tie, so it's just me and Mr. Famous Guy here. Harrison Hunt.
The dream. It's good to be here, actually. It's good to be. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I had to get in touch with his agent and to pinnacle this into this busy schedule, but we got him on the show. So, why are we here today to record this? Well, as you might know, our last episode was the third part of the Kings of Convenience. It was the final part. It ended abruptly, not because of outside circumstances, but just because, we find this sort of shortcut or got stuck. Anyway, I'll let you listen to it if you haven't yet, but while we were recording these, I thought that it'd be nice to, if we had started first with like a session 0, character creation, and go behind the scene of what we were going to do, but by then it was too late. So now that we're done, I figured let's do an after play report. I think it'd be useful for people new to Savage Worlds or maybe RPGs in general to hear it from the GM how he prepared the campaign, and also maybe talk a little bit about the production, because this is something we've been doing for about a year now. Those actual play, and they're quite popular. I like them. I remember the first one was, I think it was the Saga of the Goblin Horde, the one I did, right?
Yeah, it certainly was.
So this is what we're going to do. But first, let's just touch on a couple things here, some feedback or, what's going on with us. The Goblin Song Contest. So the deadline for submissions has passed. We've received about 10 entries, and
they're all rubbish. I mean, I've got to be honest. They are all naff. But the thing is, I've got picked 3 winners. But I think they're all pretty bad. There's not a single one I like, but I will pick 3. I guarantee you there are going to be some winners in there, and I'll try to make something out of them. But I think anyone that entered, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, yeah, like I told you, what do you expect? They're not songwriters, so I think it's part of how funny they are.
I don't think that's an excuse, though, because when we did the setting competition, we got some really good ones in there, and those people aren't professional writers, Yet we had some absolutely amazing entries. It's not an excuse. They could have tried harder. In my opinion, but still, one of them's got to win. 3 of them have got to win, and they will. And I don't think it's fair, to be honest. If I had my way, I think they'd all go in the bin. But there you go.
So now we'll decide a winner soon, and probably next episode we'll announce it. We'll have that done by the next regular episode. which should be coming out the next week.
I should point out I am joking. Thank you very much for entering, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, every time people participate in that, I mean, I love it. It's fun. Just that you guys are are such harsh critics.
Yeah, maybe I should lighten up.
Yeah, just a little bit. Flash Gordon, I know we announced that we were going to play this end of last month, but illness, it happens. So we couldn't record that one. That one got postponed until the end of March, actually. That's when we're scheduled to run this. Maybe I shouldn't just announce that stuff and just release it when we have it. That way we don't get people hopes up.
Yeah, maybe that's what we should do from now on. Because people seem to be dropping like flies. There's some sort of hideous flu going around. People are dying. I've just looked out my window. There's a pile of corpses 15 foot high. I don't know what's going on out there. Don't leave your house, everyone.
No, stay indoors. Don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to people you know even. Exactly. Don't touch them.
Precisely.
Live in a bubble. And finally, a shout out to TK333 and Gunsmith 3000 and Jim of the Jungle for their iTunes reviews.
What cracking names. I
know, right? Perfect. Sounds like names for questions, for bogus questions. Was that you making up these names and writing reviews?
Yes, I left 3 iTunes reviews. No, I wouldn't do that because I don't like this show. But the thing is, thank you very much for leaving those iTunes reviews, guys. I really appreciate that, and it really helps the show out. So cheers for doing that.
Now, the news segment.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the news. The news is incoming. Prepare yourself for the news. News! And some announcements about the Nerds International Network and the Wild Die Podcast.
Kickstarters or crowdfunding campaigns. We've got Olympus Inc., the Pelion Report on Indiegogo. This is from Fabled Environments. If you remember, a few months back, we had Charles come on the show, Charles White, and talk about Olympus Inc. So this is their second setting book for this line, and in there you'll find new bloodlines, powers, weapons, and so much more for Olympus Inc. So if you're a fan of the line, go support them. And if you're scared of Indiegogo, don't be. Actually, I like this platform better. It's just unfortunate that there aren't as many people willing to support creators on there. So check it out.
Next up, there is a new Kickstarter coming out on March 14th. It is called Savage Tokusatsu, and it is, of course, by BPB and by Kyle Carty. And what is Tokusatsu? Well, this is a Japanese type of media with expensive special effects and things like this. Most notable examples are Power Rangers and Kamen Rider and Super Sentai. So things like this, and this is going to be a new book which allows you to play all of these things in Savage Worlds. And he sent us a little test kit here, and it looks freaking awesome. It's got new edges and ways to play giant mechs and giant monsters for GMs, but also Power Rangers type dudes when you're not in giant mechs. So it is going to be flipping cool. So check that out on March 14th. So that is...
Yeah, that sounds like it's right up your alley.
Yeah, I got a bit too excited when it came out and immediately notified him and was like, when is this coming out? Give me a date.
Take my money.
Yeah, I actually gave him all my money. I'm homeless now. So in other news, send me some money, please, people. Because I gave it all to Kyle.
We're always begging people for money. That's what we do. So, yeah, that's about it. That's all I can think of from this little... I mean, there are plenty more Kickstarters coming out soon. I think Freedom Squadron coming out a day or two, the 10th, so tomorrow. And there's There's a bunch of them. Again, it feels like October last year when there were like 12 Savage Worlds Kickstarter, and we can't talk about all of them.
Well, there was the new Darkhold one as well, but that pretty much came and went between episodes. So, whoops, we missed that one. But anyway, that's it for news, guys. So let's get on with the main bit.
With the plug.
The podcast log.
All right, so this is the part of the show where I interview Harrison. Thanks for all the questions that you guys sent us for this. It's the drop of the hat, really, last minute questions. But well, the first thing I want to know is who is Harrison Hunt?
Is that a joke? I'm not answering that. It got to be a real question.
Well, from what I understand, that's your stage name. What is your real name?
Eric, these are stupid questions. Is this really what we're going to do here? That is my real name. That's my real actual name. That's actually not the first time somebody said that to me, but look, I've known you for like ages. If you're just going to ask me stupid questions, I'll stop the podcast.
Also, I see how it is. Like, we interview people. You can ask stupid questions to strangers, but when I turn it around and it's on you, then it's stupid.
Okay, I get it. You've orchestrated this whole podcast to teach me a lesson. That this whole time I've been a terrible interviewer. I did come to that realization by myself. Okay? I know I suck.
Fine. Let's do it all serious and stuff. Oh, man. Well, we'll start out with someone's question because that's actually what I wanted to start it with. Let me find it here. Well, let's start with Richard Wilcox's question here. He says, I'd be curious to know roughly how much of his campaign he plans out in advance and how much he makes up on the fly.
Very good question. See, that's a real question. Right, so, but anyway, yeah, with the Kings of Convenience specifically, I knew that this was kind of, it was for a podcast, right? So a lot of it had to be planned because we only had 2 hours to record each time. So I had to make sure that a lot of it was quite rigidly planned, and it was a bit more, in some aspects, railroady. Like, you could do what you wanted within specific scenes, but it was a structure where it was like 4 scenes or 5 scenes that I had planned out, and I would cut certain ones if we were running low on time and things like this, and I would specifically plan it like that. So, for example, on the first episode with the Alice in Wonderland one, I literally had a whole document, and I write it as if I'm writing an adventure for somebody else to read, and the reason being is because I kind of like, if I write it down like that, it's easier for me to recall when it comes to actually playing it. So yeah, I had everything planned out, to all the enemy stats, to every scene and things like this, and I know that things are always going to go wrong and things like this, but yeah, pretty much everything was planned out except for on the last episode where you guys went to the really bad Dungeon of Death. I wanted that specifically to feel like it wasn't planned and was made by a really bad GM. So yeah, that bit had absolutely nothing planned for it, and I just made it up on the spot.
All right, so basically, yeah, you had more like a framework, and that we could just move in and, do our own stuff.
Yeah, and I knew that obviously there was... It's almost like for each episode, I kind of wrote it like I would a one-sheet kind of thing. And then I'd have these specific scenes, and then if you went in and goofed them up and things like this, then that's all good. But I had to have it planned to an extent because I knew that we only had 2 hours to record, so that's kind of the short answer. But that was pretty much it, yeah. I had to make sure it was planned, otherwise, it would be like, oh, we're running way over here, but we have to stop or whatever.
Where did that the inspiration for this come from? Because obviously it was like a realms hopping type of adventure. Is this because you feel Savage Worlds is good with going from different realms, or it's just something you've been wanting to run for 10 years and finally found victims?
It was kind of like, this is going to make me sound bad and a lot of people are going to hate me, but it sort of came from the fact that when Rifts came out, everyone was like, a lot of the community, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of the community was kind of like, oh my god, I can finally use all my Savage Worlds stuff together. And I kind of wanted to prove that you could do that anyway. And that was part of the inspiration for it, was just the fact that I wanted to do something where you would go from different thing to different thing to different thing and do it kind of effortlessly, that you would have a gun from Fallout, an item from Alice in Wonderland, and an item from this, and yes, they wouldn't be balanced, but it would still be fun and still be completely doable, and that balance doesn't always matter. Okay, so if you want to play a more serious adventure, maybe that's not going to be doable, but I wanted to prove that it was kind of a thing. It's not me looking at the community and going, haha, you're wrong, but it's sort of like, hey, if you want to just play some dumb stuff, then here's a way you can do it. The thing is that I couldn't just have that be implicitly up front and say to you guys, hey, we're going to play this thing where you go to Alice in Wonderland and then Fallout and then a really badly made D&D game, because if I just told you, the surprise wouldn't be there. So I said to you guys up front, I was like, okay, well then what could I make that would essentially not tip you guys off? So I told you all that you were going to be convenience store workers, and then I think I accidentally let Eric know by taking a picture of my game shelf at one point, and you noticed that I had Wonderland No More on my shelf.
I think around the same time you asked me what I thought about the Wonderland No More add-on while setting for Savage Worlds, and you told me that you'd bought it. So I kind of put the two together for that one.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's really stupid of me. So Eric was the only one that knew that might be involved. But yeah, essentially that was all it was. Is that I think one of the biggest problems you'll face is that a revolver in Wonderland No More does a hell of a lot more damage than a regular revolver from the Savage Worlds core, if I'm not mistaken. Then if you look at, say, a plasma rifle, I think a plasma rifle in Fallout does the exact same damage, and it's like, okay, that's not balanced. But in my opinion, if you're doing something quite as silly as this, who cares? Just get on with it. It really doesn't matter. It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be fun. Plus, when you're doing 2d8 damage to somebody, it really, really doesn't matter. You're still doing a hell of a lot of damage, and both guns should do a hell of a lot of damage, so just get on with it and stop whining. And so that was part of my inspiration, was just doing something and showing people that you can have a big mishmash and just enjoy the fact that all of these systems work together without having somebody bring out this big expensive product that does it for you.
So yeah, there you have it, folks. It was a challenge, and it was also a way for you to be a dick. But that's
pretty
all.
Much.
No, but I see this as a recurring theme for you, because I remember when we played the 50 Fathoms adventure, it was sort of a reversed realms hopping, because instead of our characters having to go through different realms, it was characters from other realms that ended up in Charybdis.
Yeah, I don't know why I like doing that so much. I find that's one of the appeals of Savage for me, is that is something that you can do, and it is quite so easy to do. See, I know that different settings have a lot of different setting rules, but the thing is that when it's so easily portable, because I've played things like GURPS, and a lot of times a lot of the setting books have so many different rules, they might as well be a different game. And in Savage, that's often not the case, so you can just use something from something else. Like in my Solomon Kane game, I used the rules for vampires from the Savage Undead as opposed to the Solomon Kane book, because I preferred them, and that's one of Richard Woolcock's free things that you can get on the internet. And that's just something you could do, because that's the appeal of Savage Worlds to me, and I think that's, and so as a result, I just like having stuff come out of portals or people going through portals. So maybe I would actually like rifts.
Maybe. All right, next question. This one from our good friend Conrad. Do you Harrison, follow specific story structure or storytelling mechanics like the hero's journey or exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, or is it all free form? I don't know what any of this means, but...
No, neither do I, so the answer is no. I just do it freeform and like to it kind of as what I find is interesting at the time. Like when I'm planning an adventure for the guys and for people to listen to, when you're doing it as a podcast and you're aware that people are listening, I plan it very differently to how I would do it for my friends. And the only thing I do is bear in mind that people will be listening. If I'm doing it for my friends, I cater exactly to their tastes. For example, I know that my good friend Nick, who's part of my gaming group, likes horror. I know that horror tends to affect James, who's another guy in my group. I know that they also are big fans of loot and things like this, but then I know that might not be to everyone's taste. So what I do is I tend to cater to a wider audience when I'm making a podcast. So that also goes down to how I would maybe write a story. But I don't necessarily follow any structure. I just go, oh, what would be interesting now to happen? What would be interesting now to happen? And how would be a fun way to end this? What would be dramatic? And that's it. But I don't know anything about story structures or anything like this. I was an idiot at school. I still am an idiot, but I'm just saying I didn't listen. So I wouldn't know any of those terms.
It's just, you go by feel, right?
Exactly.
That's right, yeah. I think most of us do it like that. You've got the scholars, the scholar GMs that will, overanalyze how they build their stories. But yeah, it's not.
And that's a legit way to do it. It's just that I can't because I don't necessarily know. But it's all about feel, and that's it.
Yeah, but that brings let's go on a bit of a tangent here because. Well, first of all, we record everything over Skype. Even when Harrison GMs, it's all over Skype. There's no VTTs. There's no fancy tools that we use. So it's like you were telling me. For that, it's good to have a game that's really theater of the mind, not a tactical mini and maps battle, right? So, and you were just explaining how you keep in mind what the audience is for that. Now, not to put him under the bus, but we recorded an actual play, and this one was GM by Gary, and Harrison is still working on it because while Gary's got a very visual style of running games, they're really fun, but you find it difficult to actually make it that people can listen to it and understand what's going on. So any tips for if people want to record their actual play like you do, the kind of choices they should make, or maybe tips for that?
That's exactly it. When I started this one, and I've done ones on my other podcast, is that you're, as you said, that we did it over Skype and used no virtual tabletops, and we all rolled our dice on our tables in our houses. And the reason we did that is because it means that everyone has to announce their roles and will never forget to do so. So if I want to keep the person announcing their role in the show, I'll always have that audio. And second of all, it means everything has to be described in a way where the players will understand it, and therefore the listeners will understand it, hopefully, if I'm doing my job right. And second of all, even if you're using a virtual tabletop and you think you're describing it, you're inevitably going to make mistakes. And that Old People's Home game that we did with Gary, it was one of the best games I've played in a long time. The only trouble is it's taken me so long to edit, because as great a job as he did as describing everything, there were certain moments he didn't, and then I needed to patch it all up using sound effects so that people would understand what was going on. And that's the trouble, is that you can assume that the audience is going to assume what's going on, or you can patch it up or whatever. But the thing is that I never find personally that kind of stuff is entertaining, where you know that it's just a bunch of guys sitting around playing a game. What I feel is more entertaining is a bunch of guys sitting around trying to make an entertaining product. And part of that is if you're if you're all sitting around properly describing something and properly getting into it in your heads, then I feel as if the audience is going to be able to do that too. And I feel that's most possible when you're doing it without any virtual aids, because that's exactly how your listeners are going to enjoy it. So yeah, that's just my advice. I mean, but there are other people that can probably do it with still using a proper tabletop and sitting around it and stuff like that. But even when we recorded the Punted and the Bonce episode, which we were all sitting around the table, we did it theatre of the mind as well. And I sat before we started, I said, remember, this is a podcast, this isn't us playing a game. And second of all, you have to announce every role you do, and if anyone messed it up, I'd say remember to announce your role and things like this, because we're doing it ultimately to entertain people and to have fun with our listeners, not just with each other. And that was part of it. I know it's like a really super serious answer, but I think that there's a lot of people out there that want to do the same thing, and I think that that's a good tip if you want to really have a good time with your listeners.
Yeah, it makes sense, because I remember after we recorded the first time the six heads for Honcho, or the Saga of the Goblin Horde, the first time. After that, you explained to me that people have to announce their roles, because we were using Fantasy Grounds, and in Fantasy Grounds you just click a button, your dice are rolled, and everybody can see the result. There's no need to announce them. But when you're trying to produce a podcast like this, the people aren't going to see that. Or if you say I hit the goblin number 3, that means absolutely nothing to people listening to the show. So even though I'm still using Fantasy Grounds most of the time, and that's mostly just because I'm using stuff that I already created. So it's kind of easier to show stuff, and also the character sheets and all that to pick up pre-gens. But I've been conscious of that ever since you told me, and it helps to just don't rely on your VTT. Just announce the stuff, spend more time describing instead of assuming that everybody's going to see the map that you've got on your table there. Describe it, instead.
I think that's why I know it's like bad form to be praising of something you yourself has done, but I think that's why the Lankmar game that we did turned out so well, because that was one where right at the beginning you sat down and did the same thing and said, okay guys, right, remember this is for our listeners, not just us. And then we sat down and like everyone was announcing their roles, and we had such a good time, and it was even actually quite fun. So anybody that thinks that sounds like it's gonna suck the fun out of it, it was pretty funny when Terry kept on forgetting to announce his roles, and we kept on like taking the mick out of him and stuff like this. It was such a good laugh.
And then he said, I announced my role.
Oh yeah, we said announce your role, and he said stealth. Oh man.
That was a good time. But yeah, that's basically it. Same question asked by Richard Wolcock and Luis Alfaro. He says, what is your favorite ice cream?
It's quite embarrassing because I don't eat ice cream really. Oh, actually I can, but I don't eat dairy products. So there's one in this country. This is going to mean nothing to anyone, but there's one in this country that they do in a supermarket called Lidl. Actually, no, they do it in Richard's country as well, because they have Lidl in Germany. But it is a vegan one that is dairy free and is coconut flavoured. So coconut ice cream would probably be my favourite. It's quite boring. Sorry, guys.
You never know, right? And then Ronnie Walton, does Harrison approve ice cream sandwiches, and are they really the best of both worlds?
Yes.
You got sandwiches and you got ice cream.
Yeah, but then they always melt halfway through and start dripping through your hands. Unless you eat them so fast you get a brain freeze. So they are delicious, but I think they should make them like bite-sized. Can you get those?
You got the Klondike bars that are kind of... They're not really sandwiches, though.
What's a Klondike bar? That sounds disgusting. It sounds like medication.
No, it's got a hard chocolate shell over it, so it's on a stick too. Yeah.
Sounds disgusting. No, I don't want to eat it.
And then the Crapio 69 wants to know, boxers or briefs?
Boxers. What is with these questions, man? I said I wanted intelligent discussion today. See, I realised that I'm getting my comeuppance for all the times I did naff interviews with people. I do understand this, but I know how they feel. This is what it's like to be in hell, isn't it?
Yep. One last stupid one from Frank Turfler this time. Why is it called shipment when it goes by car and cargo when it goes by ship?
It's also cargo when it goes by plane, so it should be planement.
Okay, good enough. All right, back to the better questions now.
You know, I've seen one here by Matt Stark that I want to answer. He says, "Why did Jerry go back to the store?" And he won't shut up about this all the time.
Let's talk about it, because I got stuff to say about it too. Go ahead.
Well, you say what you want to say.
All right, so here was my thought process behind this when I came up with that with Jerry. All right. So Jerry sees that his friends or coworkers are in a bad spot, maybe dying soon. I mean, I was trying not to metagame. I knew they only had 2 or 3 wounds and they weren't going to bleed out or anything. How would Jerry know, right? So he wants to save their lives. So he wants to make a deal with Robert, save them, and I'll give you my soul. My soul is yours. But the way I worked it out in my head was that when Jerry dies, Robert gets his soul. But that's not what happened.
I see what you mean. Well, the thing is the way it went down is this, right? You bargain with the bad guy, and then the bad guy was barely listening to what you were saying, and all he heard was that you said that you wanted your job. You said, without my manager, I don't have a job. And he says, you want to go back to the store so bad you'll give me your soul? And you went, yes. And he went, all right.
Okay.
And so he took your soul and sent you back to the store. That was it.
Without a soul. So my body and mind went back to the store, but he kept my soul.
Yes. And used it to like gain a couple of advances. That's essentially what it was. And that's why when you were back in the store, you would Jerry was sort of saying all of this stuff like, I don't know, I feel weird, I need to go and lie down. And then he presses the button on the counter to do an announcement and then says, I'm empty inside. That's why. So I hope that clears that up.
You know what I thought about was it would have been cool if during the fight with Robert at the end, he would have sent my soul out to attack.
Oh my God, that would have been a great idea. Should have mentioned it at the time. I would have done that. Never mind.
Like a soul elemental or soul spirit or just, I don't know.
That's a good idea, man. I should have done that. Instead, he just got wailed on.
That's right. So that's it, Matt. I guess we got to the bottom of it now, and it all makes sense. It's just at that time I was like, what? Okay, whatever. That's the thing though with that I have to say about this mini campaign was that usually when you play a campaign, in which setting you're going to play, and it's easier to make a character with it. And that's something we didn't really have for this campaign. Like Harrison just told us, you guys are convenience store clerks and make a fun character out of that. And I have to say, Jerry was probably the weakest character I've ever made because I just couldn't come up with anything interesting that would relate to the game. So I wasn't really sad to see him go. And I think nobody was because it was a bad character.
I disagree. I quite liked him. I mean, the thing is the way I described it to these guys beforehand was that the town was kind of like a Fargo town. I don't think that allowed for a lot of creativity, but then I guess sometimes you just make a character that you don't particularly relate to or like. Do you know what I mean? But I quite liked Jerry. I thought he was pretty cool. I mean, the thing is about him is that I think he provided a little bit of comic relief, and he also had this kind of like lazy attitude that backed up the team, and he had a lot of really funny comedic moments as well. I don't know, I liked him, even if you didn't.
I mean, he was all right, but it's just like any characters, I guess. Sometimes it can take up to 5-6 sessions where you can relate to what's going on in the campaign, and it grows on you. But this was so short. But then you look at Johnny the Mimic, and I like that character right away. So
he was awesome. He was so good.
I couldn't have created that character to begin with, because that wasn't part of the campaign at the time. But when I pitched that idea to you, you're like, yeah, sure, do it. That sounds good. But the
good thing about that was that particular episode was kind of an anything goes type situation, and you were just like, yeah, I want to be a chair, and I was like, cool, tight, yeah, that's fine.
A chair mimic, yeah. No, we'll ask Mike Morrison's question here. It says, why didn't he immediately do a TPK after the players heartlessly let 6 die? Why?
Well, that was actually kind of funny, because what really happened with that was we got to the end of the Fallout episode, and then all of us suddenly realised, oh yeah, didn't we have that playing card guy from the last episode? And we all went, oh no, what have we done? And so what I did is, when I was doing the production, because after that we all just went, screw it, I don't think anyone will notice. And I'm like, I know they'll notice. So what I did is, during the production of the second episode, I went in and added the line, and the piece of paper appears to be a giant number 6 playing card. And so that way it explained the fact that 6 got portaled to a different part of the world, and he was now being used as a bit of paper by the raiders. So that was what happened. I had to do something to fix the mistake that all of us had forgotten that he was supposed to be with them. So that was what happened.
That's the problem with extras, I think, and where I tend to, well, when I run my games, Savage Rolls, I know people say it's easy to have a bunch of extras with you, but I find it too easy for those to just blend into the background and easily be forgotten. So I usually don't even bother giving extras to the players.
I often get people ask me that where let's just say they've got an extra with them called Bob. They'll be like, oh, and what's Bob doing? And I'll be like, oh yeah, he's doing this, because I've totally forgot he's even there.
Yeah.
So that was basically what happened.
Basically it. So yeah, like I said, we record this over Skype, usually over 2 hours. Well, for Kings of Convenience, because we've got our regular schedule where we record the Wild Die podcast, and this is every Sunday morning for 2 hours. So, and that goes for episodes or actual play. When it's a bonus episode, usually we can set aside more time, especially the other actual play. And then you take this, usually you have an hour and a half to 2 hours of material, and then you condense that into about 50 minutes to an hour. So my question to you, because I kind of know how you do it, but not in the details. Now, when you go to mix that, to edit that file, that huge audio file, what makes the cut for you, and what absolutely has to come out?
That's a really hard question. I don't know. I mean, I would say that anything that doesn't further the story, really, I think that's pretty much it. Because there are things such as the role playing, the roles, and things like that. Those are important to the story. Anything that characters are doing and anything that players are describing that furthers the story, that stays in. Anything that's not that comes out. If there's something out of game that's happened that's so funny, that is awesome, then that has to stay in. I think there was one time where on the Saga of the Goblin Horde actual play that you guys did, where something oh yeah, you said something in an accent that made Jamie laugh so much that you guys had to stop, and it was like the goblin was like, "What for?" And then it made Jamie laugh so much that it was just like the whole game broke down, and that of course had to stay in there. But like, yeah, all the pretty much like, I don't like any tedious rules discussion that comes out, anything like this. I think that when I make it, it's all about the story and the role playing. That's what should be in there for me. Now I know that there are people out there that like all the boring stuff in there. And maybe I shouldn't call it boring stuff because it's not boring for some people, but some people like that. You know, fans of Critical Role, for example. And the thing is, if you're fans of that, then good. That's your brand of particular enjoyment, but it's not necessarily mine. And so I'll make this product that I like to make. So yeah, I'll cut out stuff that doesn't further role playing or story, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, because like if we have to roll something, you know, we'll fumble, we'll grab our dice, and then we'll discuss the modifier, and then we'll roll, and then if it aces, we start counting and all that. But when you listen to it, all we hear is basically Harrison saying, "All right, make a notice roll," and then you hear the guy just saying, "All right, I rolled in 6."
Yeah,
and there's probably like 2 minutes of material that was cut in between.
Yeah, exactly. That's why when we have 2 hours of footage, it goes right down to 50 minutes. It's loads of tiny little cuts. It's not me cutting out big stuff.
Now, we talk about cutting stuff out, but what do you add? Are there lines sometimes that you'll add? Or someone's asking here, well, a couple people actually, about the music, the sound effects and all that. Is that prepped ahead of time, or you do it post-production?
Yeah, all of it is done post-production, because otherwise, yeah, it wouldn't come out nicely if I did any of it at the time, and also I'd be concentrating on it too much. What I do is pretty much, I think I see somebody here says here, Steven van der Veer? Van der Veer? He says he's curious about what resources are used to source the music and effects which are used in the AP episodes. And pretty much, I use freesound.org, which is awesome. But if you want anything resembling something realistic, you really got to dig. You've really got to dig, and it takes a lot of time. Now I've built up quite a decent library just from downloading them and putting them in a folder, which I might make available at some point. In addition to that, royalty-free music websites are an amazing resource. There's a lot of people that have royalty-free music on SoundCloud, which they just give away for free and stuff like this. There's loads and loads of different websites that will do this. Either they'll ask you to pay for the tracks up front, or they'll give it away for free and things like this. That's pretty much where I get all of those from. But all of that stuff is added in post-production, and what I'll do is I'll just go through, and where it's appropriate, I'll add it in and do stuff like this. A lot of time when I'm editing, it is spent listening to music and trying to figure out which track will be appropriate. But again, I've built up a fairly decent library of songs that I feel are appropriate.
Ronnie Walton, again, he wants to know how much time do you dedicate to sound music production per episode? Well, let's expand that to the whole production, because I mentioned that before, that it's a lot of work for Harrison, and that's kind of why we need Patreon money for that, because it takes a lot of time. So let's say for 1 hour of us recording, how many hours of mixing and editing does it take you?
Well, for the I'd say for the entire hour, I don't know. It varies, because for the whole episode, it roughly takes. There's some episodes that have taken me 6 hours, and some that have taken me 18 hours. So it really depends on what happens. If there's a lot of combat, that tends to take longer, because those tend to have a lot more tiny cuts in there where I need to cut the smaller things, because you tend to be rolling a lot more, and then more sound effects, more things are happening all at once. A lot of musical changes tend to happen during combat and things like this. Yeah, there are some that have taken me 2 entire days to do, and then some that have just, for some reason, gone completely smoothly and only taken me 6 hours to do, so it really depends on what's going on. The Ultimate 4 Sound one took me ages and ages because, believe it or not, there is nowhere on the internet where you can find the sound of a single zombie doing something. You can find many sounds on freesound.org of a bunch of zombies doing something, but that meant that every time something happened to a zombie, I recorded all the zombie voices myself. So, yeah, that was really annoying. So every time something happened to a zombie, I had to record a new unique zombie noise happening, then apply the effects to it, then move on. I mean, it's probably like a bad way of doing it. There's probably quicker ways of doing it, but I'm not like a pro at any of this. Anyway, yeah, I think a lot of people would probably argue that they could do it faster, or maybe that I'm using techniques that are a bit newbie and things like this. But if anyone's got tips, by all means share them, because I would love to be able to do this faster. But yeah, for all of that, it takes longest. The longest it's taken is about 18 hours, and the reason is because there's a lot of fiddly techniques and things in there, and sometimes when I really want to push the boat out on a certain scene and make it sound really cool, that can be hard. And one of the most recent examples was the car crash in Fallout was particularly hard, because making the engine sounds sound realistic to what Robert Litchford was doing while he was driving, as well as the music on the radio, then the crash itself, to make it sound realistic was really hard, because I was trying to get different sounds for the car, and I went out in my own car and recorded it using my phone and things like this.
Brilliant. So basically that one was 3 or 4 sounds mixed together with the right levels and all the right effects.
And so just to get all of that right took an incredible amount of time, and like, it's probably something that a lot of people won't notice, but when it creates the right atmosphere, that's something that, although people aren't consciously noticing it, it does just make it that little bit more entertaining. So it's just like, yeah, it's worth it, but it takes a lot of time.
Absolutely. All right, here's one here from Carlin Kendrick. Harrison, why did you leave 24 minutes of silence at the end of the last episode? Is it because you want us to take that time to contemplate the complexities of the universe and our small but humble place in all things? Or did you just forget to edit it out, leaving us listeners in a perpetual state of heightened expectations for a surprise post-credit scene, only to be left with nothing but disappointment and crushing realization that 24 minutes of our lives we could have used to realize our dreams in life was just gone forever?
Yeah, that was my mistake. I don't know why that happened, right? Because if there's just silence at the end of an audio file, when I export it, it should just not be there. So I don't know why that happened. So I'm extremely sorry about that, Colin, and anyone. I only realised it when I listened to the episode back, and I was just like, uh-oh. We'd already uploaded it by that point, so I was just like, well, deal with it, listeners. You've got 24 minutes of silence at the end there. I made a mistake. You know, all of these episodes are not perfect. There's often mistakes in them, but I don't care. And that was the biggest one thus far, so sorry about that.
Yeah, and it's partly my fault too, because usually I sort of quality control every episode before they come out, or at least before they're released on Podbean. Sometimes I'll release them right away on Patreon, which is a good thing if you're a patron, because you might catch some unedited version of a file before a real one comes out. But lately I've been just too busy to proof listen everything, so that one is one that I started listening to, and then I'm like, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to finish listening to the rest, so I just decided to release. And yeah.
One of the good things though, like working in the opposite direction though, about this format of being able to like edit an actual play, and is that, you know, there did you notice there was a bit where now listeners, this won't mean anything to you really, but it will now, is that there's a bit where right at the end where Gary says that he takes the change out of Daniel's pockets, and he says, I take the change out of his pockets, try to touch his wiener, But originally he said try not to touch his wiener, but I edited the not out, so it just sounds like he says try to touch his wiener. So it's good because if you ever want to do an edited actual play, anybody, you could just make your friends sound like they're psychopaths.
Yeah, that's part of the fun for me too. Yeah, the sound effects, the music, but just having played it and then listening to it again is what he did with it, and how the only request I'd have would be to put canned laughter in there when we make jokes. I think canned laughter would be great. So
that you seem funny.
Yeah. So we sound funnier. So if you guys want to hear that, just send us an email and
nobody wants it. No, we should do like a sitcom style one.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be awesome. But no, it's all part of the fun because you play it and then you listen to it back, and it just feels better. I'd say you make us sound better most of the time, especially when you make me rap and that kind of stuff. That always cracks me up. All right, let's see. I think we got one more question here from Luis. He says, well, it's not really related to this, but I guess I'm gonna ask it anyway. Do you think you could do better Black Edition rules that fix multi-action combat rules to allow the cool narrative to flow? Any other rules that should be removed on Black, or should we just move to Genesis instead?
This isn't related, but I appreciate the question nonetheless. Thanks, mate. I think the multi-action rules are fine, really. I mean, they're a bit. It's a bit of a grey area, isn't it? As we've discovered in recent episodes, but I think they're perfectly fine. The only thing is that I don't know. Is there any rules I want to see removed for Black? Not really. Removed entirely.
Yeah, maybe vehicle rules or stuff you don't use at all.
The thing is, though, if there's things I don't use, I don't necessarily think that they should be removed, because if there's people that do use them, then they'll be kind of annoyed that it's not in there. Do you know what I mean? And if something's in there that I don't like and I don't use it, then who cares?
I agree, but no Genesis for us.
No, Genesis is for bad people. I'm joking. Any Genesis fans out there, don't get angry. We only say that because we like to wind Jamie up.
Yep. All right.
Thanks so much for your questions. I'm sorry if I went a bit too in depth on all of that, but I really appreciate it, and it means a lot that everyone sent in so many, even the stupid ones. I appreciated those. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, anything else you want to add that maybe wasn't covered by the questions before we wrap this up?
Well, one piece of advice I wanted to give was, as I mentioned earlier, if you listen back to any of these episodes, one of the things that always annoys me is when I listen back to those Kings of Convenience episodes and I realise that, I don't know, I've made a mistake, and I notice like a little tiny mistake in there, or even a big glaring mistake, and I'm like, that annoys me, you know what I mean? And obviously these types of actual plays are quite uncommon and things like this, and edited actual plays in general are quite uncommon, but if anybody wants to do them and is thinking about doing them themselves and thinks, okay, well, I don't have the time to be doing this or whatever, I would say give it a go anyway and just try it and get it out there whether you think it's perfect or not, because if you do it and it's finished, you'll still be ahead of the people that did not get it out there. Because even if it's not perfect, and that is my philosophy, because yes, I don't really have the time to be doing this all the time. Yeah, I did it and got it finished, you know, and it's not perfect, but it is something that I really enjoyed and something that I'm really proud of. And if you guys do it and get it out there, then I would love to listen, and it'll be awesome, and it'll be finished, and that'll be cool.
I like it, but yeah, like we said, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of work, so not everybody can do it, and I think that's what makes these APs really special. that I'm really proud of is that we do manage to get these out with the help of the Patreons too, because Harrison has to work too, and the time he can't work is time he should be compensated for. So we thank you for making this possible. We wish we wish we could do them more often, but now you understand why we can't release one every week or something like that. That'd be a full-time job. So unless we get $1 million from Patreon,
that would be nice.
It's not gonna...
So if there's anybody, if Richard Branson, if you're listening, chip in, mate. We could do with Richard? $1 million. Did you just ask who Richard Branson is?
Yeah, I have no idea who that is.
He owns Virgin.
He owns Virgins?
Virgin Airlines, man. You don't know who Richard Branson is?
No, I don't even. Virgin Airlines is.
Don't forget about it. Just forget it.
Forget about it. All right, let's wrap this up.
Yo, motherfuckers, you all best back up. I always got a gun. I always come strap up. This ain't a game of pool. It ain't no time for no rack up. It's the motherfucking time for the wrap up. Anyone who disagrees will get smack up. See me back in school when I shouldn't have learned to add up. Found a gun on the floor instead of pick that up. Anyway, sorry, I'm motherfucking back up. What I'm trying to say is it's time for the wrap up. Yeah, this one goes out to all the ladies and all the men out there. Everyone in the front row, grease up. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we got a new patron. We're fully aware because we had a new patron recently, and we took the Mickey out of his name, and then he's no longer a patron. So we're not going to take the Mickey out of Gus Bus's name. We're not going to. So welcome, Gus Bus.
Yes, welcome.
All aboard.
How about some contact info then?
If you want to email us, you can do so at thewilddie@gmail.com, or you can go over to Google Plus and search for the Wild Die podcast. Additionally, go over to the Nerds International community, which we are a part of, and we're proud to be part of that, and we're proud to be gay. Additionally, you can go over to the Twitter and follow us at The Wild Die, and also Patreon, which is patreon.com/The Wild Die, if you'd like to chuck us a buck and contribute to what we do, if you like what we do. And of course, if you want to contact Gus Bus, then you can figure out his email address, which is gusbus@thefunbus.bus.
Let's hop on the bus, on the Gus Bus,
and go home. See you later, guys.
This is so bad. This is Eric saying, "Don't forget to drink your potions."
And this is Harrison saying, "Grapple the skies."
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.
No, I don't think... No, but surely he must know. No, I think that... No, because Gus Bus is obviously... That's not his real name, is it? Because I reckon Farquhar was actually his name. He's probably had all that Mother Farquhar stuff all his life. Whereas I reckon Gus Bus is obviously... His name's Gus, and he's made like a humorous name out of it. His name's obviously not Gus Bus, is it? So I reckon we can leave it in.
You never know. Maybe it's Gus and then last name Bus.
Maybe it's like the S's are silent and it's Gooboo.
Gooboo. Gooboo Mafoo.
Oh, so thanks Gooboo.
So bad.
Don't worry, I'm not recording.